So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is in the news again. If you haven't been paying attention, it's also in the Game of the Year lineup with Black Myth, with Elden Ring DLC, and all these other games right here. But there is some important news about it that I wanted to talk about, because it seems that Part 3 is going to make some big changes compared to Remake and compared to Rebirth. And the team is moving now forward with the JRPG's development. Plus, it seems that according to Games Radar and some of the other articles online, they are going to make a fully fledged flying plane feature, and exploration is going to be much more important in the third installment, in the part 3, compared to the first couple. So let's go over this article right here, reported by Games Radar a couple of days ago. The plot for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 is complete, and the team is now moving forward with the JRPG's development. And it's pretty much been like, what, only 1 year, less than a year from the release of Rebirth, the second game in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. It has been confirmed that the plot for the third and final installment have been finished, and developer Square Enix has begun to work on it. As reported by Japanese website 4games.net, FF7 Rebirth director Naoki Hamaguchi and producer Yoshinori Kitase confirmed during the seminar at the G-Con 2024 conference in Korea that the plot and concept of Part 3 had been completed and the development team had already started working on it. Now, if you did not play the remake, if you did not pay attention to the Final Fantasy VII let's just say remaster, but it's basically like a complete game, loosely following the story from the original Final Fantasy VII. There have been some pretty massive changes to what they've shown so far in the remake and the Rebirth. So it definitely seems that they are adding this whole idea of kind of like changing your destiny, basically. Some of the aspects of the old story in FF7 have been altered in a way that we may live in a parallel universe of sorts, but yeah, I guess we're gonna see the final conclusion in the third installment, which apparently has already been completed and development should start really soon. While unable to share any specific details of the game's concept, Kitase hinted that in order to differentiate Part 3 from Rebirth, players would be able to explore the map from the air thanks to an airship system. And there's also a quote here: FF7 Rebirth offered a vast map, but if we think in terms of the original version, the third game will have the high wind airship, so we need to let people experience the world from a higher perspective. He begins before adding, we will not cheat with the airship system, but challenge it head on so that players can freely fly around the map. It's a big ship. It's pretty much this. We had a portion of it in Rebirth. There was one mission when we went to one of the first cities, basically, where we went to, and we saw it parked over there, but it didn't really do anything, and we only had, I believe, some combat encounters inside of it. So I do have to wonder how control over this massive thing is going to look like, because it's on a huge scale. It basically has a full-on interior. A whole section of the game was dedicated to its interior, and there's a lot going on inside. So obviously this is going to make things a lot more fun if we get to explore the map freely without having to constantly use fast teleportation. Now, in fact, Rebirth actually added a concept version of this, which was basically Cid's Bronco that we got to fly out a little bit, but not really fly. It was basically sort of almost like a loading screen / scene. You didn't really have full control over it. You could just input a bit over there, like the WASD. You could slightly change the direction of it, but it would still bring you in the same spot because it was part of a mission. And then in the later stages, especially once we got to unlock some of the pirate treasures, we also got the boat version of it. So the boat version also serves a different purpose, but unfortunately it all felt kind of half-baked. It definitely felt like Square Enix just added the concept version of this. The map was huge, by the way, and we had the chocobos to just explore everything, but when it came specifically to the ocean region, you did not really have many things to do there. You, I believe, had a secret encounter, which basically just meant defeating a bunch of bosses at some gates and then unlocking the final boss encounter. For those of you who did not play it, I'm not going to spoil it or anything. It's a very challenging boss encounter nonetheless. You would also get a very strong armor from that boss. But besides that, you only had the pirate treasures, which you unlocked in the later stages of the game. And yeah, I mean, it didn't really do much besides giving you some extra boss encounters. And those boss encounters, once you have defeated those, yeah, you would basically get these chests. And in the chest, you would get a pirate relic. And with that pirate relic, you could then unlock, I believe you would have to get like 5 relics. And with that, you would then have to craft a special item. Yeah, this one right here, the Corsair's Compass, which would basically just give you guidance towards the next pirate cache. So yeah, the ocean was filled with pirate caches, and those caches would give you pirate jetsam, which you could then use to craft some of the end game and also some of the new game plus or hard difficulty. Can't really fully remember, but basically you could craft some extra items with them. But it did feel like it was half-baked in many situations. It did feel like that was more of an afterthought, and definitely something that we would see more of in part 3, because part 3 supposedly will add this feature so that you can fly around the map. And let me tell you this, the map in Rebirth was already big. It brought some interesting things, some interesting mechanics, especially in terms of how you handled chocobos and how you would travel differently with each type of chocobo in each different region. But when it came to the ocean area, it was like just this, travel to these specific spots, and that was it. And maybe on the way, you could get some of those extra items to craft something, but that was basically it. So now that they will add this feature, I think that that's going to just make things a lot more interesting. I think that having the possibility to actually fly the airship this time around is going to be much better. Of course, this isn't going to be the Bronco, by the way. The airship has been teased in some of the early stages. And you, of course, if you played the old games, you kind of already know its significance. But I do have to wonder how they will add the high wind, because if I'm not mistaken, the high wind is actually really huge. So, but with the first 2 entries in the trilogy receiving critical acclaim and Rebirth being a favorite for many Game of the Year awards in the coming months, excitement and expectations for the game are understandably sky high, pun intended. But while it's a good sign that development is already underway, players will still have a long time to wait if the nearly 4 years separating the releases of Remake and Rebirth are any indication. So at the earliest, I think that we're only going to see this around 2028, 2027, maybe if we are super generous, but I don't think we're gonna get this earlier than 2027. 2028 is the most likely candidate. Maybe if everything goes smoothly and they can reduce some of that development time. I believe that in a previous article from this or last year, Square Enix basically admitted that it took way less to create Rebirth compared to Remake, because they had all the tools necessary, they had the experience with the engine, and they pretty much knew already what to do. So who knows, maybe we will see it in 2027, but again, that's a long shot. Now, if you also paid attention, there's the Game of the Year awards, basically, like we talked about. The game is featured for the Game of the Year, so if you want to go ahead and vote it, go ahead and do so. I believe that, in yesterday's stream, we already voted Black Myth Wukong. I think that it definitely deserved, but for me, it's between Black Myth Wukong and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, of course. It's debatable if Elden Ring DLC should be in this category or in a category just exclusively dedicated to DLCs, but if Final Fantasy VII Rebirth wins or Black Myth Wukong wins, I'm going to be just as happy. If Metaphor wins, it's still a win. All of these games right here are really huge, and I think that for the Game of the Year contender, we have some pretty good candidates. I kind of wish that we had Helldivers 2 and also maybe Stellar Blade. I'm not sure exactly why they did not qualify. Maybe the games journalists don't like those games. I don't really know, but Black Myth is here, so I think that Stellar Blade should have been. Stellar Blade is in some of the other categories, so you can go ahead and vote for them. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.